Queen stood on the crystal balcony of her palace, looking out at the three suns that lit up her. Her people, had ruled this part of space for thousands of years. They were tall, strong beings with bodies that looked like living crystal. Their minds could move objects without touching them and speak to each other across great distances. Today was different. Today the humans were coming. They had discovered Earth 2 years ago. The humans were so far behind in technology that it was almost funny. They still used metal ships that burned fuel to fly between planets. They had no mind powers at all. Their bodies were small and weak, covered in soft skin instead of strong crystal. But Earth had something they needed. Deep in the human planet were rare metals that the crystal people used to power their greatest machines. The humans were willing to trade, but they wanted something in return: peace, safety, a promise that the powerful would not take their planet by force. The solution was old and traditional. A marriage between rulers would marry a human leader, and the two peoples would be joined in friendship. The human ship landed in the royal garden with a loud roar of engines. Smoke and fire came out of the bottom. Shook her head. Such primitive technology. The ship's door opened, and the humans came out. They wore simple blue uniforms and moved carefully in the higher gravity of the crystal world. Most of them were clearly afraid, though they tried not to show it. Then she saw him. Captain walked down the ship's ramp with calm, steady steps. He was not the tallest human, not the strongest looking. His hair was black and cut short. His eyes were dark and serious. When he looked at her, he bowed politely but did not look away like the others. "Your Majesty," said in carefully practiced language. His accent was terrible, but he was trying. "I am honored to meet you." Studied him, she had expected someone more impressive. The humans had said he was their best diplomat, but he seemed so ordinary. Still, there was something about the way he carried himself. Quiet confidence, maybe. "Welcome to Prime, Captain," she replied in perfect human English. She had learned their language in days, while it had taken him months to speak even basic words. The wedding ceremony took place 1 week later. It was a grand event that mixed human and traditions. Wore a crown of living crystal that responded to her emotions, glowing brighter when she was happy. Wore a simple black suit that looked plain next to the beautiful crystal clothing of her people. During the ceremony, she noticed how watched everything carefully. His eyes took in every detail of the crystal technology around him. Most humans would have been overwhelmed by the beauty and strangeness of it all, just observed and remembered. The nobles whispered among themselves during the celebration. They made jokes about the small human who had married their mighty queen. Some called him a pet. Others said he was just a trophy to show off their victory over the humans. Heard the comments but said nothing. He smiled politely and asked questions about culture and history. He was particularly interested in their technology and military traditions. The nobles thought this was cute, like a child asking about adult things. In the months that followed, settled into life on the crystal world. He lived in a wing of the royal palace that had been modified for human needs. The gravity was lowered, and the air was adjusted to help him breathe easier. Every day studied. He learned the language until he spoke it perfectly. He read their history books and technical manuals. He attended court meetings and watched how the government worked. When anyone asked why he was so interested in everything, he said he wanted to understand his new people. Found herself enjoying his company more than she had expected. Unlike other males who had wanted to marry her for power, never tried to influence her decisions or take control. He was content to listen and learn. When she had problems to solve, he would ask thoughtful questions that helped her think more clearly. At night, they would sit together in the garden and talk. Would tell her about Earth, about blue skies and green plants and oceans of water. She would tell him about the crystal caves where her people were born and the songs that the living crystals sang. "Do you miss your home?" she asked him one evening. Was quiet for a long moment. "I miss some things," he said finally, But this is my home now. You are my home. Felt her crystal skin glow slightly pink. Among her people, this showed happiness and affection. Had learned to read these color changes, and he smiled when he saw it. The other nobles still treated as a harmless decoration. They spoke freely in front of him about military matters and government secrets, assuming that a primitive human could not understand or would not care about such important things. But began to notice small things. Always seemed to know when supply ships would arrive before anyone announced it. He asked very specific questions about star charts and trade routes. Sometimes, late at night, she would see light coming from his study where he worked on what he called cultural reports. When she asked about these reports, explained that he was documenting culture to help other humans understand their new allies better. It seemed reasonable, even thoughtful. After 3 years of marriage, realized something surprising. She had fallen in love with her human husband, not just the political partnership they had started with, but real love. Was kind, intelligent, and peaceful. He made her feel calm in a way that the endless demands of ruling had never allowed before. She felt the same way, though humans were harder to read then. They did not change colors to show their emotions. But she had learned to see love in the way he looked at her, in his gentle touch, in the way he always put her needs before his own. The queen believed she knew everything about her human husband. She was completely wrong. The first reports came from the edge of space, from mining colonies in dead star systems where no one important lived. Workers found strange metal objects drifting between planets. The objects looked like machines, but they were made from materials no one recognized. General L, the head of the military, brought the reports to Queen during her morning court session. Sat quietly in his usual chair beside the throne, listening as he always did. The miners say the objects started moving when their ships got close, the general explained. Then they attacked. We lost contact with 3 mining stations. Felt a chill run through her crystal body. Pirates. No, Your Majesty. The attack patterns were too organized, too smart, and the weapons. General L paused. The weapons cut through our shields like they were not there. Leaned forward slightly. What did the attacking ships look like? Several nobles turned to stare at the human. It was unusual for him to speak during military discussions. General L looked annoyed at the interruption. Why would you care, human? The general asked coldly. Just curious, said calmly. I have read many history books. Sometimes old problems come back in new forms. Nodded for the general to answer. Often had interesting thoughts about problems, even if he could not help solve them. The ships were black and silver, covered in strange symbols. They moved unlike any ships we know, almost like they were alive. Nodded thoughtfully and said nothing more, but noticed that he asked for copies of all the reports to read later. Over the next few weeks, the attacks got worse. Entire colonies went silent. Warships sent to investigate never returned. The few survivors who escaped in damaged ships told impossible stories of machines that could repair themselves and weapons that learned how to fight better after each battle. Spent more and more time in his study, reading everything about the attacks. He also started sending more of his cultural reports back to Earth. When asked why he was writing so many reports lately, explained that the situation with the unknown attackers might affect human colonies too. I want my people to be prepared, he said. Even though we are not as advanced as humans deserve to know what threats might come their way. This seemed caring and responsible. Gave him access to the military communication networks so he could send his reports faster and more securely. 1 month after the first attacks, General L requested an emergency council meeting. His crystal skin was dark gray with worry when he entered the throne room. Your Majesty, we have identified the attackers, he said. They are devourers. The court fell silent. Even, who usually stayed calm about everything, looked surprised and concerned. Devourers were legends from the old times, stories told to young crystals to teach them about ancient dangers. According to the stories, they were machines built by a race that had died out millions of years ago. The machines were programmed with one simple command: destroy all organic life in the galaxy. Most had thought the Devourers were just scary stories, but asked the question that everyone was afraid to voice. If they are real, why are they active now? What woke them up? General L did not have an answer. The attacks continued to spread inward toward the important worlds. Each battle brought worse news. The Devourers adapted to every weapon used against them. Crystal beam cannons that worked in the first battle were useless by the second. Psychic attacks that confused them initially had no effect when tried again. Worse, the Devourers seemed to be learning about technology and copying it. Survivors reported seeing the machines use improved versions of crystal weapons against their own creators. Started working even later into the night. Sometimes would wake up and see light coming from his study at 3 in the morning. When she asked if he was having trouble sleeping because of the war, said he was just worried about everyone's safety. "I feel so helpless," he told her. "Your people are fighting and dying, and there is nothing I can do to help. At least I can make sure my government knows what is happening. Maybe Earth can prepare defenses or help somehow." Felt her heart warm at his concern. Even facing an enemy that could destroy everything, was thinking about how to protect both their peoples. But she began to notice strange things about his reports. They were very detailed and technical, asked for specific information about weapon designs, fleet positions, and military strategies. When she asked about this, he explained that his superiors on Earth wanted to understand exactly what they might face if the Devourers came to human space. The war continued to go badly. They lost half their military fleet in 3 months. Entire star systems fell to the spreading machine plague. Refugees filled the inner worlds, telling stories of metal creatures that consumed everything in their path. During one particularly dark night, after news came that another dozen ships had been lost, found standing on their balcony looking up at the stars. "They are out there," he said quietly, "growing stronger with every battle. Our scientists think they have found a weakness," said, trying to sound hopeful. "Something about disrupting their communication signals." Turned to look at her. In the starlight, his expression was more serious than she had ever seen it. "What if that does not work?" he asked. "What if nothing your people try works? The Devourers have been adapting to everything so far." Felt fear creep into her crystal heart. "Then we will keep fighting. We will find another way. Even if it costs everything. Even if you have to destroy inhabited worlds to stop them." The question surprised her. Rarely talked about military strategy and never about such dark possibilities. "I hope it never comes to that," she said. Nodded and put his arm around her shoulders. "So do I, but if that time comes, if you are facing an impossible choice, please remember that there might be options you have not considered yet." She looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" "Just keep an open mind. Sometimes help comes from places you do not expect." That night lay awake wondering what it meant. But the next morning brought news of another lost colony, and she forgot about their conversation in the rush of crisis planning. She did not know that had sent another coded message to Earth that night. The message was much longer and more complex than his usual cultural reports. It included detailed tactical analysis of the Devourer attacks and specific requests for information about human defensive capabilities. Most importantly, it ended with a single line: "Recommend immediate implementation of Contingency Protocol 7. Time is running short." On Earth, in a hidden military facility, Admiral Sarah Mitchell read the message and smiled grimly. Operation Looking Glass was about to begin. The Devourer fleet appeared at the edge of the home system like a dark cloud of metal death. Thousands of black ships moved in perfect formation toward Prime. The planet's 3 suns seemed dimmer when the enemy machines blocked their light. Queen stood in the command center deep inside her crystal palace. Around her, generals and scientists worked desperately to coordinate the final defense. The screens showed their remaining fleet moving to intercept the Devourers. It was not nearly enough. "How many ships do we have left?" she asked General L. 237 combat vessels, Your Majesty. The enemy force numbers in the thousands. Closed her eyes. 3 years ago, they had commanded the largest fleet in this part of the galaxy. Now they had less than 1/10 of their original strength. Every battle had made the Devourers stronger while making her people weaker. The first engagement began at the outer edge of the system. Ships fired their most powerful weapons at the approaching enemy. Crystal energy beams and psychic disruption waves struck the Devourer ships. For a moment, felt hope as several enemy vessels exploded. But the hope died quickly. The remaining Devourer ships adapted within minutes. They changed their shields to absorb the crystal beams. They modified their hulls to resist the psychic attacks. Then they struck back with weapons that seemed to learn from each shot fired. "Flagship Bright Star is down," reported a communications officer. "Admiral is requesting permission to retreat." Watched the battle displays in growing horror. Her ships were being destroyed faster than she could count them. The Devourers were not just winning, they were studying each victory to become better killers. "Grant permission to retreat," she said heavily. "Pull all ships back to the inner defense grid." General L approached her with a tablet displaying tactical options. His crystal skin was almost black with despair. "Your Majesty, even with the planetary defense systems, we cannot hold them off for more than a few hours. The evacuation ships will not have enough time to escape with more than a fraction of our population." Studied the numbers on the screen. 40 billion lived on the and its moons. The transport ships could save perhaps 2 million before the planet fell. "What about the other options?" she asked, though she dreaded the answer. General L hesitated. "There is the sundering device." Everyone in the command center became very quiet. The sundering device was the most forbidden weapon in history. It had been built centuries ago during their worst civil war, but never used. The weapon could tear apart the fabric of space itself, destroying everything in several star systems. "If we activate it," the general continued slowly, "it will destroy the Devourer fleet completely. But it will also kill every living thing within 50 light years. That includes our own colonies and several allied species." Felt sick. The cure would be worse than the disease. Billions of innocent people would die to stop the machines. "How long do we have to decide?" she asked. "The device needs 6 hours to charge up for activation. The Devourers will reach the planet in 7 hours. Dismissed everyone from the command center except for her closest advisors. She needed time to think about the impossible choice. Save the galaxy by becoming a monster who killed billions of innocent people, or let the Devourers continue their deadly spread to other worlds. Hours passed in agonizing discussion. Some advisors argued that using the sundering device was their duty, that the few must be sacrificed to save the many. Others insisted that becoming mass murderers was worse than defeat. As the deadline approached, found herself alone in her private chambers. The activation console for the sundering device sat on her desk, looking innocent despite its terrible power. All she had to do was enter her royal codes and press one button. Outside, she could hear the sounds of battle getting closer. The Devourer fleet had broken through the outer defenses. Soon, they would begin landing on the planet's surface. Placed her hand on the activation console. The metal felt cold against her crystal skin. She thought about all the people who would die if she pressed the button. She thought about all the people who would die if she did not. You don't have to make that choice. She spun around to find standing in the doorway. His expression was calm but serious, more serious than she had ever seen him look before. How did you get past the guards? I asked them to let me through. They know you need all the support you can get right now. He walked over to stand beside her. Help is already coming. Stared at him in confusion. What do you mean? What help? Our fleet is destroyed. Our allies are too far away to reach us in time. Looked at the activation console, then back at her face. You don't need to use that weapon, trust me. Trust you? I love you, but you are just one human. What could you possibly do against an entire fleet of killer machines? Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had changed. It carried a tone of authority and confidence that she had never heard from him before. I think it's time I told you what humans are really capable of. Before could ask what he meant, alarms began sounding throughout the palace, but these were not attack warnings. Someone was trying to contact the planet from space. Walked over to the communications panel and entered a code that did not recognize. The screen came to life, showing the view from their orbital defense platforms. What she saw made no sense at first. Ships were appearing out of empty space at the edge of the system, not ships or devourer machines. These vessels looked unlike anything she had ever seen before. They were sleek and angular, colored in blues and grays that seemed to shift and change as she watched. The ships moved with perfect coordination, like a school of fish swimming through water. There were hundreds of them. Admiral to Prime Command, came a voice from the communications system. We are here to provide assistance against the devourer threat. Looked at in shock. Admiral, that was last name. She said slowly, who is that? Met her eyes steadily. That's my sister, Sarah, Admiral Sarah of the United Earth Defense Force. The Queen felt her world tilting. Admiral, but you said you were a captain, a diplomat. I lied, said simply. About a lot of things, but not about loving you. On the screen, the human fleet was engaging the devourer ships. Their weapons were unlike anything in the arsenal. Instead of energy beams, they fired what looked like streams of pure information. The devourer ships began to malfunction and turn on each other. How is this possible? Whispered. Moved to another control panel and began entering commands with the skill of someone who had used such systems many times before. Humans have been preparing for this fight for 3 years, he said. Ever since I sent them the first reports about devourer activity, we built ships specifically designed to counter their adaptive capabilities. We developed weapons that attack their core programming instead of their hulls. Sank into a chair, overwhelmed. You've been spying on us. This whole time you've been a spy. Stopped what he was doing and knelt beside her chair. His expression was gentle but serious. Yes, I was sent here to gather intelligence, but what happened between us? That was real. I fell in love with you despite my mission, not because of it. On the screens around them, the battle continued to rage. The human fleet was winning, but barely. Even with their advanced weapons, the devourers were adapting quickly. There's something else, said quietly. Something I need to tell you about what humans are really like, about why we hid our true capabilities from everyone, including you. Looked at him with new eyes. This man she thought she knew completely had been hiding secrets that could change the fate of the galaxy. Tell me, she said, tell me everything. Stood up and walked to the large window that showed the battle raging in space above them. His posture was different now and more commanding. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of authority that had never heard before. My real name is Admiral, Special Operations Command of the United Earth Defense Force. I've been a military intelligence officer for 15 years. Felt her crystal skin turn pale blue with shock. 15 years, but you're only 32 years old. I started when I was 17. Humans mature quickly when they need to. Activated several control panels with practiced ease. When we first detected your people exploring near our space, Earth's government made a decision. We could either reveal our true capabilities and risk a military confrontation with a superior force, or we could appear weak while we learned everything about you. So you made us think you were primitive. Not exactly. The ships and technology we showed you were real human designs, just not our best ones. Pulled up holographic displays showing technical specifications. We have two completely separate technology trees, the public one that everyone sees and the classified military systems. Studied the holographic displays. The human ships she was seeing now were clearly far more advanced than anything her people had seen before. They incorporated design principles that seemed to blend human engineering with technologies she did not recognize. "Where did you get these designs?" she asked. "We didn't just study your technology. For the past 50 years, human scout ships have been exploring dead systems throughout the galaxy. We found the ruins of dozens of extinct civilizations. We learned from all of them." Brought up star charts showing human exploration routes that extended far beyond what they knew about. Red markers showed systems where humans had found abandoned alien technology and study sites. You see, humans have a talent that most species don't. We're very good at learning from others and adapting their ideas to work better. While they built an empire based on your natural psychic abilities, humans built one based on collecting and improving everyone else's best ideas. Felt overwhelmed. Everything she thought she knew about the balance of power in the galaxy was wrong. But why hide all this? Why not just show us what you could really do? Turned to face her directly. Because we wanted to understand you first. Not just your technology, but your culture, your values, your way of thinking. We wanted to know if you were people we could work with or enemies we would have to fight. And what did you decide? That you were good people who had gotten comfortable being the strongest force in this region. You weren't evil, just used to being in charge. Smiled slightly. We thought maybe you could learn to share power if you found the right partners. On the screens around them, the battle was intensifying. The human fleet was holding its own against the Devourers, but both sides were taking heavy losses. "The marriage proposal was part of the plan?" asked. "Initially, yes. Earth needed access to your rare metals to build weapons that could fight the Devourers. Our scientists had found references to these machines in several of the ruins we explored. We knew they were out there somewhere, and we knew they would wake up eventually." Pulled up more files showing ancient texts and warnings about the Devourers found on different dead worlds. Most species that encountered them tried to fight with conventional weapons and failed, but humans found records of one race that succeeded in defeating them. They used quantum viral warfare to corrupt the Devourers' hive mind programming. Quantum viral warfare. We attack their software instead of their hardware. Instead of trying to destroy the ships, we infect their communication networks with programs that make them turn on each other or shut down completely. Watched the battle displays more carefully. She could see now that the human weapons were indeed causing the Devourer ships to malfunction in strange ways. Some were spinning out of control. Others had stopped moving entirely. A few had actually turned around and started attacking their own forces. "The metals we needed from your planet were essential for building quantum processors powerful enough to generate these viral attacks," continued. "But we also needed detailed intelligence about Devourer behavior patterns. We needed to see how they adapted to different types of attacks. So you used our battles with them to study them." "Yes, I sent detailed reports about every engagement to our research teams. They used that data to refine the viral programs we're using now." Felt a mix of admiration and anger. The humans had manipulated the situation brilliantly, but they had also put her people at risk to gather information. "How many died while you were collecting your data?" she asked coldly. His expression became pained. "Too many. That's why I'm telling you the truth now instead of maintaining my cover. Every day I delayed revealing our capabilities meant more of your people died. I couldn't live with that anymore. But your mission parameters probably said to maintain cover no matter what. They did, but my mission parameters didn't account for me falling in love with the target. Moved closer to her. What we have is real. Everything I told you about my feelings was true. The only lies were about what humans could do to help. Before could respond, the communication system activated again. Admiral Sarah's voice filled the room. We need you to coordinate fleet integration. The Devourers are adapting to our viral attacks faster than expected. We need to combine our strategies. Looked at questioningly. She realized he was asking her permission to reveal his true identity to her military commanders. Do what you need to do, she said. But after this battle is over, we are going to have a very long conversation about trust and honesty in marriage. Activated the communication link. Admiral, this is Admiral. Patch me through to General L on a secure channel. General L's voice came through moments later, full of confusion. Admiral, Captain, what is happening? General, I need you to listen carefully and follow my instructions exactly. The human fleet is here to help, but we need to coordinate our attacks to be effective against Devourer adaptive capabilities. For the next hour, worked with both human and commanders to plan a combined assault. Watched in amazement as her quiet, diplomatic husband transformed into a strategic military commander who clearly knew more about space combat than some of her own generals. The plan was complex. Ships would attack with traditional weapons to force the Devourers to adapt their defenses. Then human ships would strike with quantum viral attacks designed to exploit the specific adaptations the machines had just made. Finally, combined forces would hit them with weapons that the Devourers had not encountered before and would not be able to adapt to quickly. Why will this work when nothing else has? General L asked. Brought up tactical displays showing the attack pattern. Because humans have one major advantage in warfare that most species don't. We think like our enemies. We spend time trying to understand how they think, what they want, what they fear. Then we use that understanding against them. The Devourers are machines. They don't think like living beings. No, but they do think. They have programming, and all programs have weaknesses. Human programmers have been studying computer systems for centuries. We know how to find and exploit those weaknesses. Realized that this was what made humans dangerous. Not just their technology or their weapons, but their ability to understand and outthink their opponents. They had spent 3 years learning everything about both the and the Devourers, planning for exactly this moment. There's one more thing you should know, said to both and the general. This isn't just a rescue mission. Earth has been building an alliance of species who survived Devourer attacks. We have ships from 6 different civilizations in that fleet. On the screens, could now see that some of the ships attacking the Devourers were indeed designed using different technological principles. Humans had somehow convinced multiple species to work together against the common threat. How did you manage that? She asked. Smiled for the first time since the battle began. We told them the truth about what humans can do, and we asked for their help instead of demanding it. Turns out most people prefer cooperation to conquest. The combined attack began, and immediately could see the difference. The coordinated assault confused the Devourer adaptive systems. They could not adjust to multiple completely different attack styles at the same time. But even as the battle turned in their favor, knew that the real changes were just beginning. Everything about the political balance in the galaxy had just shifted, and she was married to the man at the center of it all. The combined fleet's attack hit the Devourer forces like a perfectly timed symphony of destruction. Watched the battle displays in amazement as human quantum viral attacks followed energy weapons, while ships from other species she had never seen before struck with completely unfamiliar technologies. The Devourers, for the first time in their ancient history, could not adapt fast enough. Their programming was designed to learn from one type of attack at a time, but the coordinated assault from multiple species using completely different approaches overwhelmed their systems. Devourer command ship is losing formation control, reported General L with excitement in his voice. Their entire fleet is breaking apart. Stood at the command console, coordinating the battle with calm precision. Admiral, begin Phase 2. Target their communication networks while they're confused. Understood, Admiral. All human ships switch to disruption protocols. Watched as streams of pure information flowed from the human ships toward the Devourer fleet. The enemy machines began spinning wildly out of control. Some started firing on their own forces. Others simply shut down completely and drifted powerless in space. Within 2 hours, it was over. The mighty Devourer fleet that had conquered half the galaxy was now nothing but drifting scrap metal. Not a single enemy ship remained operational. But as the cheers echoed through the command center, did something that surprised everyone. Instead of celebrating the victory, he immediately began coordinating rescue operations for Devourer survivors. Asked confused, "Why are you trying to save them? They were trying to kill us all." "Because that's what humans do," replied, working at multiple control panels at once. "We try to find solutions that let everyone survive when possible." He activated a communication channel to all ships in the combined fleet. "This is Admiral. Begin salvage operations for recoverable Devourer units. Extreme caution protocols in effect. We want to study their technology and see if we can reprogram them for peaceful purposes." General L looked shocked. "You want to save the machines that tried to exterminate us?" "The Devourers were programmed to destroy organic life by a species that died millions of years ago," explained. "They're not evil, just following bad instructions. If we can change their programming, they could become protectors instead of destroyers." This idea was so foreign to thinking that several of the military officers started arguing. In their culture, enemies were destroyed completely to prevent future threats, but continued giving orders with quiet authority. Admiral, assigned technical teams to analyze Devourer command protocols. I want to know if their core programming can be safely modified. Already on it, brother. Our computer specialists are excited about the challenge. Realized that she was seeing something unprecedented. Instead of simply winning a war, the humans were trying to turn their enemies into allies. The scope of their thinking was far beyond anything she had imagined. She said quietly, "Can I speak with you privately?" They stepped into a side chamber where they could talk without being overheard. Looked at her husband with completely new eyes. "Why?" she asked. "Why reveal all of this now? You could have maintained your cover and continued gathering intelligence. Your mission was clearly succeeding." Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than the commanding tone he had used during the battle. "Because I realized that my mission had changed. When I first came here, my job was to learn about thee and assess whether you were potential allies or threats. But somewhere along the way, I started caring more about protecting you than following orders. You disobeyed your government for me. I disobeyed my government's timeline, not their ultimate goals. Earth always wanted to build an alliance with your people. I just moved up the schedule because waiting any longer would have cost too many lives." Felt her crystal skin glow warm pink. Despite everything that had happened, despite the lies and deception, had risked his career and possibly his life to save her people. "But there's something else," continued. "Something more important than military strategy or political alliances." "What?" "I fell in love with you. Not the queen, not the political advantage you represented, but you, the person who sits in the garden talking about crystal songs, the woman who worries about her people's happiness more than her own power, the ruler who was willing to sacrifice herself rather than commit genocide." felt tears form in her crystal eyes. "How can I trust anything you say? You've been lying to me for 3 years." "Because this is the first completely honest conversation we've ever had, and I'm going to keep being honest from now on." Took her hands in his. "I lied about my job, my background, and my people's capabilities, but I never lied about loving you." Before she could respond, Admiral Sarah's voice came through the communication system again. "We've got something interesting here. The Devourer Central Command Unit is still intact. Our programmers think they might be able to reprogram the entire machine network to serve as a galaxy-wide defense system instead of a destroyer force." Activated the communication link. Explain. "If we can change their core programming, we could turn them into automated protectors. They would patrol dead systems looking for new threats instead of hunting organic life. Essentially, we could create the galaxy's first artificial immune system." Stared at in amazement. "You're talking about turning the greatest threat in galactic history into a protection force." "That's the human way," said with a slight smile. "We don't just defeat our enemies. We try to understand what made them enemies in the first place and fix the underlying problem." Over the next several hours, as the combined fleet worked to secure the battlefield and begin the complex task of reprogramming millions of Devourer machines, began to understand what made humans truly special. It was not their technology, although that was impressive. It was not their military tactics, although those had saved the day. It was their approach to problems. Where other species saw threats to be destroyed, humans saw challenges to be solved. Where others saw enemies, humans saw potential allies. "There's something I need to ask you," she said as they stood on the observation deck of the flagship, watching human and crews working together to repair damaged ships. "Anything. What happens now? Your people clearly don't need our protection anymore. They don't need our technology. What do humans want from the Alliance now?" Considered the question seriously. "Honestly, we want to learn from you. Crystal technology is amazing, but more than that, your people have built a stable, peaceful society that lasted for thousands of years. Humans are good at solving immediate problems, but we're not as good at long-term planning. You want to learn how to govern. We want to learn how to build something that lasts, how to create peace that doesn't require constant warfare to maintain, how to make decisions that benefit everyone instead of just the strongest." Realized that this was perhaps the most human thing of all. Even in victory, they were thinking about how to do better, how to be better. "And us?" she asked. "What happens to us personally? Can a marriage built on lies become something real?" Turned to face her fully. "I don't know, that's up to you. I know that I love you and I believe you love me, but I also know that trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild." Looked out at the combined fleet. Human ships working alongside vessels and craft from species she was only now learning existed. It was a sight that would have been impossible just days ago. "My people have a saying," she said. "The strongest crystal is formed under the greatest pressure. Maybe marriages are the same way." Smiled, and for the first time since the battle began, he looked like the quiet, gentle man she had fallen in love with. "Are you willing to find out?" "On one condition," said firmly. "No more lies, no more secrets. If we're going to rebuild this marriage, it has to be between equals who trust each other completely." Agreed. Though I should warn you, the real story of what humans are capable of is much stranger than anything I've told you so far. Laughed, a sound like crystal bells ringing. "After today, I think I can handle strange." As they stood together watching the galaxy's alliance take shape, realized that had been right about human strength. It was not their weapons or their technology or even their cleverness. Their greatest strength was their ability to turn enemies into friends, to find cooperation where others saw only conflict, and to build bridges between completely different ways of thinking. And perhaps most amazingly of all, they had the wisdom to hide that strength until the galaxy was ready to accept it. That took a kind of patience and long-term thinking that even the ancient had to admire. The queen was indeed astonished when her human husband revealed his real strength. But the strength that surprised her most was not his military power or political cunning. It was his capacity to love someone enough to risk everything for their happiness, even when it meant abandoning carefully laid plans and disobeying orders. In the end, that was the most human trait of all, the willingness to choose love over duty, hope over fear, and cooperation over conquest. And it was exactly the kind of strength the galaxy needed to build a better future for everyone.